Good day, everyone. Tom Cryptogram here, and I'm back with a few more reviews of different learning resources for Verilog specifically and HDL in general. What I wanted to cover today would be actually getting what should you do and where should you go to learn something with a real FPGA. Once you have an FPGA, where do you go? So our resources that we've covered so far have not required FPGAs. The only source that we've covered so far that required an FPGA was actually the Make FPGA book, which I found to be extremely good for really getting some hands-on experience when you receive your FPGA in the mail or wherever you're getting it from exactly. So what I feel would be a great tutorial series would kind of start off with no FPGA and using some of these online resources I talked about before, like EDA Playground, and then moving on to actually receiving the FPGA and getting some hands-on experience fairly quickly. And the best tutorials I've found have actually been Numato and Alacrity, and they have their downsides as well. We really just need to get our hands on an FPGA, get some stuff done, and feel accomplished through work and production. So these tutorials here are very good. As far as I've found, these are very, very good in my opinion from what I've seen. I haven't followed them so much, and this is where the downside comes in. You need to buy their FPGA. They don't just have a fairly generic one that you can buy, and they're often fairly expensive. There's a couple more that require FPGAs that I'm not going to cover here. And they're also extremely good lessons, but their FPGAs are so expensive, I just can't recommend them. Nobody wants to kind of see if they want to maybe learn Verilog and get into this whole thing and really dive deep and start off with a $200 plus investment just to find that out. It's kind of ridiculous. My FPGA that I bought was this Open3S 500E, and it has its own drawbacks. But what turned me onto it originally is it comes with these peripherals that are dead on exactly what you'd get with an Arduino package if you're familiar with Arduino and using microcontrollers. Has a VG. I believe I got the package B because I know I have this large LCD. I ordered it so long ago I wasn't able to find the order, but I have the VGA out and the large LCD and some of these button presses, and it came preloaded where if you plugged all these in the right slots on here, these different pinouts that are already broken out, it's basically a breakout board with an FPGA in the middle, it would light up and use all of these at once, and it was really cool. And the reason I picked it is because it came with some interesting tutorials. It was recommended from this one site that no longer exists, I believe hamsterworks.co.nz. Had some tutorials on it in VHDL, which I wasn't super interested in, but I thought it would still be an interesting way to start. And then that site went down. No big deal, because again, it comes with a DVD with the Vivado installer. The problem is that it actually not Vivado, the Xilinx ISE, the old program or ISE that you need for running Xilinx tools on their old chipsets. And so my chipset on my FPGA here isn't compatible with the like Webpack or whatever, the Vivado, the new version. So I guess that's okay. I can still learn a lot, and it came up with like how to light your LED. So basically a Blinky program, and then how to use the joystick and how to use each of these has their own Verilog and VHDL files that you can load up and look at and mess with and try and combine and mix and match. And I've done that a little bit. I really just got Blinky working and then implemented one of their pre-made, I think, maybe push button tests for making the 7-segment display light up somewhere. And anyway, it was a good time. It was an interesting learning experience, but I don't know how to read a data sheet, and I don't really know how to kind of continue on and use the FPGA and understand the pinouts and everything without kind of directly using the files it came with. So I kind of needed to back up and find another tutorial that used an FPGA. The problem with Numato is that their intro FPGA that they want you to buy is $175, and I have no idea if that's a good deal, a bad deal. It comes with some good peripherals. I'm really looking at the networking peripheral here, USB. Those are just some things I'm really interested in personally. Sorry for zooming that in and out. An Arctic 7, I believe, is new enough to use the Webpack, the Vivado implementer instead of the old one. Hopefully, it's got some switches here. It's just great. It seems like a really good setup here. And of course, what really comes along with it that's the of most value is from what I've seen, a very, very good tutorial. So going back, the tutorial very quickly, it doesn't give you a bunch of bull and try and make you learn truth tables over and over and spend hours and hours learning extreme basics. It really kind of jumps headfirst into some real code and initializations. Yep, there we go, bravado, and creating a project. This is so good, having these like very explicit screenshots of each of these for the lessons. I used to actually have to design and create tutorials for software that I was on a development project with for U.S. Marines to learn. And if you can imagine the density of the individual, I am a Marine, by the way, that you're working with and trying to teach is of a very high caliber. And so making things extremely explicit like this is very, very highly professional in my opinion, and very good. It just keeps you from being mixed up, from trying to say, click this button, click this button, click this button, and you're looking all over the page for that button over and over and over and trying to read step 6, 7, 8 and look at each different new window and trying to understand all the information you're taking in while following the steps. So having the screenshots is just pro. I love it. So I was really happy with that. I did have a problem with actually getting their importers working. I went and, even though I don't have this board, I haven't ordered it from them, I tried to follow these steps anyway and download their tools and really trying to analyze their lesson plan before I review it and send it on to all of you watching this video. And so I probably did something wrong, and I really didn't want to spend too much time on it. I kind of just continued anyway without adding the board to my available set of boards within Vivado. I kind of continued on anyway and followed through like implementing their code and looking at a waveform, and I got that working, if memory serves, and was again very happy with it. And then they kind of back up, and this is perfect to me. Just get some work done, feel accomplished, and then back up and say, what did we do here? How does this work? What kind of pinouts are we looking at? What matters? I love that, just going back and forth. Get somebody to accomplish something and then tell them what they accomplished and how they did it. That's how I learned C++. I feel like most of the time we got a lot of examples in college, and then I feel like we kind of backed up and learned, like, okay, you made these pointers do this and that and this, and I'm like, well, I don't really understand what we did. And it's like, okay, well, let's back up and look at what we really did and really understand it. Now let's manipulate the code a little bit more this way or that way and kind of see how that changes the behavior of the program. And it was fantastic in my opinion. So you get this sort of learning and then experimentation. The next one, of course, is Alacrity. The perfect price right here, in my opinion. This is about as good as it gets, I would imagine, for a decent board. I don't know if they have the outputs that you can put on here, like an expansion for networking and a little network card. But the price is right. The real problem is that it's been sold out for months, as far as I can tell. I don't know if that was a recent development or not. So anyway, the tutorial I did go through quite a bit, not as extensively as the new motto tutorial, but great. They have an actual YouTube video to follow. What is digital logic? That really start with the basics. That's fine. Definitely not a bad way to start. They really get into some combinatorial logic and truth tables on this like massive thing here, circuit, and really get into some weeds, which I really liked. And that's kind of it. After that, after those 3 recommendations, I mean, you can find tons of recommendations, and hopefully people will have some in the comments on the Reddit page for other projects that require an FPGA. And after that, it's really just, if you've gone through all 3 of these videos and kind of looked at these tutorials and kind of picked some and followed along, you're kind of done. But we're still lacking a little bit, right? We're still almost at just like beginner tutorials, and this is where we want to advance a little bit more. Since we've gone through a lot of these beginner tutorials and intermediate tutorials in the case of Alacrity here, I feel like we would move on to blogs and advanced learning and really seeing how people are talking about their take on using their FPGA and really looking at some advanced write-ups. One of my favorite ones, actually, before we get into MicroZ, is Zip CPU. This is where I really first got into looking at and reading and understanding FPGA usage from an advanced user's standpoint, and following along with Dan's blog here. He does have a tutorial that I'm not a super huge fan of. It's not as if they're bad exactly, but I personally can't just follow along with some, blurbs in text. I feel like there's a video missing here that actually goes through and talks further along each of these bullet points that are called out throughout each of these. I looked at the tutorials for quite a bit because they kept being recommended to me by different people, including Dan himself, of course. I followed Dan on Twitter and was a patron for quite a while. I feel like I'm missing something with the tutorials. Is there more? Am I missing like the actual walkthrough or further explanations of all of the information Dan puts out? I feel like I am. And I don't know what I could possibly be missing exactly. But in the end, what we kind of really want is I think I'm going to have something in the next video. I have to put out what I feel like is a syllabus and how to get through that syllabus. And the question that keeps coming up is, how do I get from Blinky to Axie? Essentially, how do I get from the hello world of the FPGA world, which is blinking an LED, to I think he called it a wishbone, an Axie crossbar, which I think is a standard by ARM. I think Axie is an ARM standard that they came up with, but it's fairly open and you can implement your own version. I've only looked into Axie a little bit. It's very, very advanced for the level I'm on. I've, written all of 3 actual Verilog files that were synthesized into real RTL at this point. So for me to speak on something that high is pretty crazy to me. But yeah, like getting into UART, which is a communication protocol that I think is used on chip between different sections of your Verilog code at the RTL level, right? So how do you get there? And I think we're going to talk about it on the next video, and I really want to have like a lesson plan. This is where you start. Go here, learn this, go here, learn this, etc., and kind of follow along. But that's not something I've accomplished myself, so it's really hard for me to really get at that level. I really appreciate the sort of open dialogue a lot of people have had on the Reddit posts that I've made. There's not as much dialogue as I thought. I get a lot of upvotes, but I don't get a lot of comments, and I could really use some more comments, I feel like. But I feel like we'll get there, and I'm not in a huge hurry. I still have 2 or 3 more sort of episodes that I've pegged out as to what I feel I want to cover. I believe the next episode will actually just be additional resources that I think are very good, but weren't at the top of their respective categories. And MicroZ, I really just had to mention them on the way by. They're just constantly putting out more and more. I think it's actually just one person. They have an About Me section. So there we are. But the blogs are put out very consistently. The detail is very high, typically, and I'm a huge fan of trying to consume this content, even though it's so far above my head. I've been reading off and on about different implementations and usages of FPGAs in programming for years now. Even though my accomplishments have been fairly low, that's fine. I am only just now in a hurry to actually learn something and have a more tangible skill set for work purposes. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed something out of this video, had some sort of takeaway, and I look forward to seeing you again on Saturday or Sunday whenever I put out the next video. Thanks.